Hi there, I'm author and writing coach Kevin Johns. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can create and, more importantly, stick to a regular writing schedule. I work as a one-on-one coach with authors, and one of the first things I do with my clients is help them to develop a regular writing habit. It can be one of the most beneficial things to your writing career, especially if you're working on a long-form project like a novel. So let's dive right into the presentation. So I broke it up into 4 different sections. The first section is habit formation and something that I like to call NNWT. That's an acronym. We'll get into that. Second, we'll look at scheduling, the overall topic here, the importance of getting it into the calendar. Then we'll look at making your sessions as productive as possible. And then finally, we'll look at sticking to your plan. All right, so let's dive right in. Habit formation. I think one of the reasons we want to create a regular writing practice is not just that it makes the scheduling side of our things easier. There's this kind of external role that scheduling and being organized plays where it makes our lives easier to know whatever it is. Monday mornings, I'm going to do my writing. But in addition to that external stuff, there's something going on internally in your mind and even in your body. There's been many books written about the power of habit and how much we underestimate the role that habit formation plays in our lives and in how our brain chemistry actually works. Everything becomes easier once it becomes a habit. There's so many things that we do unconsciously because it's been so ingrained into our bodies and into our brain chemistry that we can kind of run on autopilot. And to a certain extent, that's what we want our writing to become. We want it to become something that flows naturally and isn't a struggle and that we're used to. And we do that by becoming regular writers, by creating a regular writing habit. Now, I think the best way to do this is what I call NNWT. And NNWT is a non-negotiable writing time. So what this means is that you're not getting your writing done when you feel inspired or when you happen to have a free moment. I'm a busy father, and I know that way too often the things that are important to me get left until those moments when we happen to get the kids to bed early one night, or it's the end of the week and my long list of to-do items has finally been done and I can finally get to the things I really want to do. If that's how you approach your writing, you're never going to get big projects done. You want to treat your writing as non-negotiable writing time. And what that means is you're going to pick a period of time that you're going to do your writing in, and you're not going to do anything else during that time. Your husband, your wife, your family, your friends, they're going to know that that is your NNWT, and they're going to know they're not going to invite you to movies at that time, or your spouse isn't going to ask you to pitch in with the laundry during that time. It's your non-negotiable writing time. It's the time each week or each day where you focus on your writing and nothing else. And the way you do that is via scheduling. So your non-negotiable writing time goes into your calendar. You put it in your iPhone, you put it on your computer, you write it on your paper calendar hanging on the wall so that everyone in your life knows that's your writing time, included you. So you don't schedule doctor's appointments during that time. You don't tell friends you can meet them for dinner. It's in your calendar and it's weekly, if not daily. Now, sometimes life gets in the way. Anyone who's ever been on a fitness program knows that despite your best efforts, once in a while you're going to miss a session. And it's the same way with your NNWT. Once in a while you're going to miss a session, especially if you're writing, say, 3 or 4 times a week. Now, what I like to do about those missed sessions is something that I take from the fitness world called the 2-in-a-row rule. And what the 2-in-a-row rule means is if you miss a writing session, that's fine. No problem. It happens. Don't beat yourself up about it. But if you miss 2 sessions in a row, now you're getting yourself into trouble. That's when the habit starts to break. That's when it starts to get easier to not do the work than it is to get your butt in that chair and do your writing time. So make sure you don't miss 2 sessions in a row. It's something I highly recommend, especially for you novelists and people who are working on long-form projects, is have specific word count goals. Don't just sit down and say, I'm going to do a bit of writing today. Sit down and say, I'm going to write 700 words today, or whatever your particular chosen word goal number will be. Now, how you come up with those goals is actually via a specific formula that I recommend. Bear with me, we're going to do a little bit of math here for you, okay? So I've got an equation in which A equals the total word count for your project, B equals the total number of days to deadline, and X will equal the number of words you need to write per day. And the formula is just A divided by B equals X. So let's give you a practical example of what I'm talking about here. Say you want to write a 50,000 word first draft of a manuscript, and your deadline is 3 months from now, or we'll say 90 days. Okay, so the formula you want to work out is 50,000 words divided by 90 days equals 555 words every single day. So if you're going to hit your deadline and get your first draft of your 50,000 word manuscript written 90 days from now, you'll need to write 555 words every single day. Now, I don't actually recommend writing every day. I certainly recommend scheduling your NNWT, but I don't think it should be 7 days a week. There's a reason most people don't exercise 7 days a week, and that's because rest and recovery is as important a part of your physical conditioning as the workouts are. Your body needs time to recoup. And it's the same with writing. You need creative time. You need free thinking time. So I would recommend something like perhaps 3 days a week in which you are getting your writing done. So how we determine the number of words you need to get in each of those writing sessions done is you say, for our 50,000 word manuscript that we have 90 days to write, we have to write 555 words a day, or multiply X 555 by 7, and we get the number of words per week. 3,385 words per week. Or divide 3,385 by 3, the number of sessions you're going to write each week, and you come up with 1,300 words for your 3 writing sessions every week. So I know it sounds a little bit of mathy. It doesn't sound like fun, creative work, but it can be really, really useful to know that you're going to sit down and you're going to write 1,300 words 3 times a week for the next 90 days. Otherwise, you're not going to achieve your goal. You're going to miss your deadline. It's a fantastic way of staying on track, of knowing whether you're progressing or of knowing whether you're falling behind. And the great thing is, when you do miss a session, you know that you have to write 2,600 words the next session to make up for the 1,300 you missed on the day that you missed your writing session. All right, so it's a little mathy, but guys, know how many words you need to write and know what your deadline is for your project. It's so important to staying on track and measuring progress. Now, if you are doing a shorter term project like a weekly blog, instead of having specific word count goals per session, you might want to consider something like a specific allotted time. So rather than saying you're going to write 1,300 words 3 days a week, maybe you're just going to give yourself 3 hours once a week to write your weekly blog post. You know, it's a great way of just getting down your butt in the chair and getting the work done for an allotted period of time. The point is to really draw some boundaries around this NNWT and partition off that special writing time from all the other crazy things that we have going on in our lives. something I highly recommend is planning ahead so that when you sit down in your non-negotiable writing time sessions, you know what needs to be written. Now, if you're working on a nonfiction piece like a blog, a great way to do this is to mind map or brainstorm to get some ideas down on paper, and then to use that mind map as an outline for your blog post, or perhaps even for the book as a whole. You know, for example, you could mind map around the word success. What does success mean to you? Maybe it means well-being, wisdom, respect, fame. Each of those 4 ideas in the mind map could become paragraphs in an article or chapters in a book. The point is to use this creative thinking time to outline and provide a framework for where your overall piece of writing is going to go when you sit down to do the NNWT. I also highly recommend doing your research ahead of time. One of the easiest ways to go off track during your writing is the desire to research. And the second you hit Wikipedia or Google, you're going down a rabbit hole and you're going to be lost for a period of time. And that's going to be lost writing time. Even something like a blog post where you traditionally want to be linking out to other resources over the course of the blog, have those links ready ahead of time, so that you're not finding yourself popping online, grabbing a URL for your article, and then suddenly getting distracted by Facebook or something popping up on Twitter or a great article in your newsfeed or whatever. So do this planning and research ahead of time. And by ahead of time, I mean make it a separate session from your NNWT. There's this concept of the right brain being your creative, flowing brain, and your left brain being a much more organized and logical brain. And I think as writers, when we're researching and when we're writing, it all flows together to a certain extent. But for kind of metaphorical purposes, I think you can think of your planning as your right brain time, your creative time, your exploration time, and think of your non-negotiable writing time, that time where you're sitting down and you're putting those sentences down on the page, as your left brain time. You've got your outline, you've got your research, and now you're going to focus on getting the writing done. Now let's look at how you can make your writing sessions more productive, because you can have the most regular sessions possible, but if you're not being effective during those sessions, the scheduling side of things isn't going to matter. So something you want to think about is the environment that you do your writing in. Where do you do your best writing? Is it at home where there's lots of distractions from family? Or is it at a coffee shop where there's potentially also different distractions? Think about your writing environment. If you've ever hosted a workshop or even attended a workshop, you know that we tend to keep workshop rooms temperature on the cool side. And the reason is cool rooms tend to keep people more awake and more alert. If you have a nice warm room, people want to curl up and take a nap and doze off. So when you sit down to do your writing, make sure you're not in too warm a room. Have a nice cool room that keeps you awake and focused. Also make sure that you have appropriate music playing. Often something with lyrics can be quite distracting, so you may want to look at using music without lyrics as kind of background filler to allow you to get into your flow state. I often go to YouTube and type in alpha brain study music or something like that, and it'll generally be just new age background music that will kind of drown out the rest of the world but still allow you to focus on your work. I also recommend having water or coffee or tea with you. If you're going to be writing for a long period of time, you'll want to have refreshments there with you to make sure you stay well hydrated. And you'll also want to make sure that if you have snacks with you, that you're eating real food. And by real food, I mean nuts, meats, vegetables, and fruits, as opposed to highly processed, high carbohydrate, sugar-loaded food that's going to give you a big insulin spike, which is going to give you a big surge of energy, but is then going to crash and leave you feeling tired and distracted and ready to quit. That's not the mode you want to be in during your writing. So you want to make sure that you're feeding yourself nutritious, healthy food that keeps you energized and focused and doesn't crash out the way sugar and highly processed grains and other food can. Okay, here's a tough one for you guys. When it's time to do your writing, turn off the internet. I know this is the connected age, and I know we all love our internet, but your writing time is your non-negotiable writing time. It's not your surfing the internet time, so shut that puppy down. Facebook and Twitter aren't going to die if you're not on them for an hour or an hour and a half while you do your writing. So turn that internet off. Something else that comes from the fitness world that we don't apply enough to writing, I think, is the concept of a warm-up. I always think of hockey games. Whenever you go to a hockey game, you always want to arrive nice and early because all these NHL players, they go out and they do a 20-minute warm-up long before the game ever starts. They go and they stretch and they feel their muscles. They feel the stick on their puck. They warm up the goalie with some shots. And then they leave the ice and the ice is cleaned and then they come out for the game. It's not like they just walk out on the ice, drop the puck and start playing. Their bodies need time to get into the proper ready to perform state. And I think our minds and our bodies are the same when it comes to writing. So think of doing something. It could be as short as 5 minutes of free writing when you start your writing session. So rather than sitting down and right off the bat saying, all right, I got to start working on my novel right now. Instead, just fill the page with whatever comes to mind. The whole point is just to get your fingers moving or get that pen going across the page. Fill it up with some ideas. No one's ever going to read it. It's not a story unless you want it to be. You're just filling up the page for about 5 minutes. Then transition to some journaling. So this could be productivity journaling, a gratitude journal, or even just a diary type journal. The idea is we're going to transition out of this free writing where we're just letting ideas flow to a little bit more organized and structured writing now for our journaling. But again, it's not the high pressure that we might feel when it comes to doing our fiction writing or writing our blog posts. So 5 minutes even of journaling and then transition into your writing project, whatever it is, your main project. Give your body and your mind time to get warmed up and to get those juices flowing. Something you might want to consider is writing your first draft by freehand. There's a lot of pressure associated with sitting down at the computer and filling that white screen with words. Sometimes it's a lot easier to start with a pen and a paper. It's a lot more pressure-free. And also, when you then transcribe those handwritten notes onto the computer at a later time, normally some revisions take place during that process, and it almost feels like a free draft happens. You get a second draft in without having the pressure of it feeling like a second draft. You could also consider something like using your phone's voice recorder, especially if you've already done a lot of planning or outlining. A first step for you might be just talking the ideas out into a voice recorder. And again, the ideas will become more organized when you transcribe them. You could also look at something like voice-to-text software, like the Dragon software that will take your voice and turn it into the words on the screen. The point is just, I don't want you to approach your writing as some sort of stressful, austere thing that only happens when you're sitting at that computer and your hands are on the keyboard. Writing is a growth process that starts with brainstorming and moves into organizing and then moves into this first draft stage, which is just about getting ideas down on the page. And however you want to do that is fine. It's later on during the revision process that you can get in there and really make sure that things are tight and beautiful and poetic and all of that stuff. For your first draft, just get the ideas down however works. If you're going to be engaging in a long writing session, take conscious breaks. And what I mean by this is you don't want to burn yourself out. You want to take breaks. After 3 hours sitting at a computer, you need to get up and move around. In fact, after half an hour sitting at a computer, you probably want to get up and move around. But at the same time, there's something known as cognitive dissonance. It's just this idea that it takes a bit of time mentally to get back into your flow state after you've taken a break. We spend so much of our lives as business people, as artists, as writers, as teachers, trying to get into a flow state. So be very careful about breaking it. You want to take your breaks. You want to treat your body with the respect and health it deserves, but at the same time, you want to be smart about the way you take those breaks so that you're not causing big cognitive dissonance every time you go in and out of your writing session, which is exactly why we don't want you popping on the internet throughout your non-negotiable writing time. All right, let's look at how you can stick to your regular scheduled writing plan. Again, it'll be great if you get this scheduled, but if you don't stick to it, it's not going to be effective. And I think one of the most effective ways to stay on course are visual representations of success. And a visual representation of success can be something as simple as every time you hit your word count goal, crossing it off on the calendar with a big X or a green check mark or whatever feels good to you. I think there's something important about celebrating the small victories along the way as we work on these bigger writing projects, and being able to look at a wall and see that you haven't missed a writing session for 6 weeks or 2 months or whatever is a fabulous motivation to keep going forward and to stick with it, or to get back on track when you do miss a date. As we talked about earlier, you also want to have deadlines. These can be external deadlines created by an editor or a publisher or someone who you're guest blogging for, but it can also be an internally created deadline. And by that, I just mean a deadline that you create for yourself. I've told the story many times that I worked on my first novel for 8 years, and it was only when I finally picked a publication date and sent that date out to several friends so that I was accountable that the book was finally completed. And when the book was completed, it changed my entire life. I wouldn't be speaking to you if I hadn't created a deadline after 8 years of working without one. Something else that's wonderful is the concept of accountability buddies. Someone in your corner cheering you on, who's been there, who knows what it's like, or who's going through it with you and who can help keep you on track. Whether it's a writing coach like myself, whether it's a writing group who you meet with, regularly, whether it's a writing friend, these are all people who can keep you on track and who can offer help if things do go a little wonky along the way, as they most assuredly will. This writing thing is never easy, especially a novel, because it's such a big project, and it can be a lonely project. You're working for a very long time without a lot of feedback, and that's why I think working with writing coaches, joining writing communities, forums online, interacting, attending live readings in your community and book conferences, all of these things is so important, because it's that sense of community and accountability that's going to keep you moving forward towards achieving your goals. And then finally, believe in yourself. I've been on quite a journey these last few years, to the point now where I'm writing and coaching full time. And one of the things I've learned along the way, so much of what we achieve or don't achieve is controlled within ourselves and our own belief in our ability to do so. I think it's Henry Ford has a quote, I think it's him, and he says, "Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right." So change that mindset. If creating a regular writing schedule or program is something that you've struggled with, believe that you can do it. Nothing that we've talked about on the podcast today is too difficult to implement. And if you've listened this long, we're 25 minutes in, it means you're passionate. It means you care. It means writing is important to you. So believe in yourself. I believe in you. I work with writers every single day where we go through this system and we implement these ideas, and I see the results. My clients see the success. I see the success in my own writing, and I know you can do it too. So there you have it, guys. I hope you found this presentation helpful. Get out those calendars, schedule in those non-negotiable writing times, and I know you're going to be a success. If you want to learn more about me, visit www.kevintjohns.com. And if you'd like to learn more about my coaching services, visit www.kevintjohns.com/coaching. I hope to hear from you. Talk to you then.